Hearts against Dundee.
Good game.
Real good game.
After the Edinburgh Derby, Michael, really important for the Jambos to bounce back and put on a spirited display. And they did that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. That was a good, particularly the second half, it was like a proper cup tie, in terms of sometimes when you've got two teams in the top flight and it becomes a bit of a run-of-the-mill game almost. But Friday night wasn't like that, especially the second half. Dundee were better. They were getting at Hearts, and then Hearts, replied in kind. And obviously the goals from Kartum just out of the top draw.
Magnificent,
sensational. You could stick 5, I think I said in commentary, Trevor Carson's in the goal, and he still wouldn't save it. It was an absolutely sensational strike. And then Dundee, credit to them, because they started the second half brightly and got themselves level. But for me, obviously, this goal comes not long after. It was the potential, talking about red card, no red card. That's what flipped it back in Hearts' favour. That's a lovely...
How he's even managed that, by the way?
Yes, yeah, just flicked it. But
good vision.
So hard.
The power with the flick, unbelievable.
Yeah. Good vision, good imagination. Sander Kartum looks like a player. And I guess, we have talked all along the Jambos this season and what they do with scouting players. And we've had Neil Critchley on, who's told us how they identify players. It's only a couple of goals, but these are the type of talents potentially that Hearts are trying to unearth to bring to Scottish football. And it looks good, Alan, at the moment.
Yeah, I think he was relatively quiet in the first half, but he showed real quality. I think the first goal, the technique was brilliant. He nearly done it up the other end, not as well, to be fair to him. But the second goal, see the turn, the spin, and then he's going away from the goal. So to use his left foot and flick it back the way into the side net was incredible. See if you ever try and do something like that, to get power on it is so hard. But I think Dundee made it a game in the second half. I thought they'd done all right, but again, they just conceded way too many goals. You think in the league was like something like 61 now and then another 3 on Friday. You just worry for them a little bit. But no, Hearts played well.
Right. It feels like...
Were your hands up there, Michael? Were you admitting something?
Because you just need to... No forgetting. Just calm the jets, Like, as Al said, with the greatest of respect, he didn't, and this is no criticism because he scores 2 great goals that effectively win the game. He didn't do a great deal more in the game. You can see that he's a very nice technical player. But the first time that I'd watched him is exactly what comes out, you say, technically very nice. And then you're looking and going, Brann Bergen was almost like the biggest club that he'd been at throughout his career. And I'm looking and going, he looks like he could play at a higher level than that. And watching him so far, my biggest concern would be you need to get him in the right area of the park to have the impact. And playing on the side of the diamond is not going to get the best out of him. Now, I know that might not be how Neil Critchley is going to line up, in the future. But at the moment, the game passed him by. He needs to, for me, be playing as a number 10 in behind the striker and not having to go running here, there and everywhere. You need to get him in that area where he can really go and affect the game, which he did for the second goal, but he needs to be in there most of the time. Otherwise, it looks like a player that would drift, to be honest.
Look, my Jets are calm, by the way. It's some of the Hearts fans are getting excited by the quality of the finishing, and if you do that every few weeks, then that's a big contribution on its own. But Michael, bringing in form players, I think it's something you mentioned either when Neil Critchley was on or the week prior. You said you wouldn't want to see Hearts abandoning the development of good young Scottish players. I didn't bring it up at the time, right? But the following few weeks on social media, which apparently you don't read, there was a lot of Hearts fans saying, wait a minute, we had 7 Scottish-born developed players in the starting lineup the weekend that you mentioned that. So just for clarity, are you talking about because of the approach now at the football club and recruitment that you would worry that we get away from that? Or are you saying there's not enough now? Go on, defend yourself.
Well, it's not a case of defending myself. You've just explained it, Darrell. It's pertinently obvious what I'm talking about, that you don't want to drift away from that. And that's not unique to Hearts. That's any club, in Scotland, that you want to have a basis of the team and the nucleus of the squad that are not just homegrown, but from Scotland, that then it's easier to get that close-knit, team unity. And then when you bring in that foreign talent, they then integrate better. But me personally, I just feel, and Alan, I'm sure would, give you his view on it. When you've got people from everywhere, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get that team unity together.
That is definitely the case. I mean, I've been in squads myself, especially at Aston Villa, where there was a lot of boys from here, there, and everywhere, and it sometimes becomes difficult because a lot of the boys from certain countries will they go with each other and they don't really integrate as well as they possibly could have. So I think there's a nice mix and blend to be had. If the spine of your team, or a lot of it is Scottish, and then you can add a little bit of flair here and there that's going to kind of get you to the next level, then for me that's a perfect blend.
Obviously, that's exactly what the Turks were thinking when they recruited Michael over there. I think you bring in a little bit,
by the way,
didn't quite work out that way.
And by the way, Darrell, just to give you insight into that was a shambles as well, because it goes into exactly what I was talking about there. So you had a German-speaking manager, Thomas Doll, who had a Turkish translator at the side of him. He would instruct and pass out his commands in German. The Turkish translator would then translate into Turkish. You had a group of English-speaking guys, so there was like myself, Mila Jedinak, who went to eventually Aston Villa with Huts. He was there as well.
Big angry man.
There was a few other English-speaking guys. There was a couple other Australian boys. There was a Swedish guy that spoke, English. Then you had like the Croats and the Serbians that were all having a translator with them. Then you had Portuguese and Spanish-speaking group, and then you had the Turkish group. So you had like 4 or 5 groups all getting it translated into different languages. And
that could have been anything. That could have turned out anything.
And here's the beauty on it, right? Because I'm fluent in German, as you well know, I'm hearing what the manager has actually said. And when it's getting translated into Turkish, the Turkish translators translating into English, I'm saying to the boys, that's not what the manager just said. So that's my point. I have
Are you fluent in German?
Both sides.
You're fluent in German?
Yes.
Not a chance. How have we never?
I am.
Is this why you were doing the Swedish stuff with Jimmy Tillin earlier this season? There's a touch of that about you as well, is there? Come on, what can you give us in German? We had Derek Ray in the show and I didn't get any German. Give us anything.
I cannot believe we've never spoken about this. I'm just back from 2 Wochen in Österreich auf dem Schnee. This is sehr good.
So when did you?
Don't get him started, Darrell. Don't get him started, please.
When did you become fluent in German?
Ich habe an dem Schule gelernt.
Is this for real? Can't believe this. Here's me thinking all those years, Alan, I've been working with an uneducated man.
I'll give him that. He's very clever. So fair play.
Would you stop giving him
credit when credit's due. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. That's impressive. I can't believe that didn't come up, by the way, when Derek Ray was in the show. Anyway, there you go. Very impressive, Michael. Very impressive. Right, just briefly on Dundee. I think you've kind of both touched on this, but Al, there was a point in the game they got right back into it. Things are not going their way, as you know, in the league at the moment. They did show some fight. They need to take this on now, don't they? Because next weekend, the Dundee derbies on the horizon. It's huge.
It's absolutely massive. I think Adewumi had a shot, I think, just on the stroke of half time, and he hits the post or the bar, one of the two. And it felt like it would have been a bit of a smash and grab going into half time. That's what it felt. But fair play, the second half they came out and they showed fight and spirit, and they must have watched like the Hibs game. They were trying to get it wide. Everything was, they upped the tempo, everything was a lot quicker, and they looked like they could maybe go on and do something. I think the second goal kind of takes the wind out their sails a little bit and then they drop. But you think of where they're sitting at this moment in time. I just think the goals that they give away, the amount of them, and a lot of the time it's from like individual errors or mistakes or can't clear the box, those sort of things, and they get punished. So 3 points in front of St Johnstone. They've got a huge game at the weekend where I feel they have to win. They have to get something. They need to turn this form around now, because since they 6-0 defeats and stuff, it seems like they've just been going a little bit backwards, and they need to get on the front foot again.
Yeah. The big problem was, and we said it at the time, that Tony Docherty mentioned about how it was an anomaly, the 6-0 defeat of Hearts. But the problem was that it was that bad a defeat that it clearly has shaken them to their core. And then I think it was 3 days later, because I think the Celtic game was a midweek game. I think it was a midweek. It wasn't even a week later. It was 3 days later, midweek, going to Celtic Park and getting smashed for 6 as well. That has obliterated the confidence, you know. And all of a sudden you start getting on this death spiral almost, and it's so difficult to get out of it. So even though he would have looked at that Hearts game as an anomaly, it's had a lasting effect. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, agreed.